from the apologies I received, there's only one absentee, Councillor Hughes. If they arrive before we get to item 5, they'll be able to take part in the debate, but otherwise I would like us to start, please. Before we start meeting, the housekeeping for the Guildhall, can I remind everyone that mobile phones, please, should be on silent or preferably turned off during the meeting. There are no fire alarms planned, so in the event of a fire, you please make your way out of the room following our staff, the Mace Sergeants, to the nearest evacuation point. Whilst we're doing our meeting, please remain focused on the topic being discussed. Questions should be direct and specific to the item of business being discussed. Please try and avoid repeating points which have already been made, and respect other members and the position of the chair. Thank you. And I would like to start with agenda item number 1, which is apologies. I've only received written apologies from Councillor Patrick. Sorry, Chair. The next one is the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, which will then get us back in sync with our agendas. I've got the minutes for the 27th of January and the minutes for the 17th of February. You have all been issued these and given the opportunity to read through them. Would anybody care to make any comments or require any alterations? Right, in that case, with a show of hands, can you please accept those minutes? Yes, everybody up there. Thank you very much indeed. I shall sign those later. Thank you. All right, item number 3, declaration. Yes, I've read both of those at the same time. Yes, we took them both at the same time. Thank you. Right, declarations of interest. Councillors are reminded the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to the business on the agenda, which have not already been included in the register of interests. This must be done before any discussion takes place on that item. Okay, I've received no intimation of that, and obviously we've only got one item on the agenda, but if anybody does feel they have to say something, then please do so before we start on that. Agenda item number 4, our Local Government Access to Information Act, exclusion of press and public. I see no reason to exclude the press and public from this meeting, and therefore we'll be invoking that. Right, okay. We will then move on to agenda item 5, which is the planning application 250072 LDC for 25 The Strand, Topsham. Katie, if you would mind to give us a presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Hayley Stokes, Assistant Service Lead for the Development Management Team in City Development. I'm going to be presenting today on behalf of a member of my team, Matthew. Oh, is it not working? Is that better? It is quite bad in here, isn't it? So if any problems, just shout. Oh, I should be shouting really, shouldn't I? Is that working? No. Ah, there you go, perfect. So just to clarify, this is a listed building consent that we're dealing with today, so it isn't a planning application, in fact. So that means comments need to be focused on the listed building consent refers to alterations to a listed building, in this case, a grade 2 listed building, which is Topsham Museum. So just to guide, because we're not dealing with a planning application, it means we won't be considering issues like impacts on neighbours or highways as an example. So the reason why this listed building consent is before us today is because it's the County Council's own application, as they own Topsham Museum, and we've had an objection for the Society of Protection of Ancient Buildings, so SPAB, and I'll refer to them as SPAB as we move forward. Just to clarify, they are non-statutory consultees, so we chose to consult them to get some additional advice. I've also asked Naomi Archer, who's our Conservation Officer, to attend today, just in case you've got any technical questions you want to ask about it, about the proposal, as she's a specialist in this area. So just going through, just a bit of context. If you don't know already, Topsham Museum's located in the southern part of Topsham, just a little bit north of the Goat Walk and near the River Exe. This is the site location plan that was submitted. If you have been to Topsham, you may have noticed there's actually scaffolding around the building at the moment, but that was more for investigative works. And the reason why we've got the listed building consent in front of us today is the extent of the problems with the building, which I'll illustrate a bit more, was clear and quite extensive, which is what has required the listed building consent today. The property is located in the Topsham Conservation Area. This aerial photograph illustrates the museum and its linear form. The front part where the red dot is the oldest part of the building, so that's sort of 17th, early 18th century. And the piece behind is what's called the sail loft, so where they repair the sails and used to repair the sails in the past, so before it was a museum. It's got quite that distinct, I can't use the pointer, it's quite distinct in Topsham where they have the area of open space like the gardens to the side of the building rather than the rear, which is also clear for the museum itself as well. So this is just to show you what it looks like at the front. There's some quite distinct shutters. Actually, these are later additions to this Georgian building, and then they've got the distinctive Georgian 6/6 windows as well. Lots of timber panel work. So it was a merchant's house, and it had its own mooring on the River Exe. So the key things we're going to look at today as part of the listed building consent are roof and floor repairs, external masonry and wall repairs, including a parapet, replacement of the windows in the sail loft, removal of the external rendering, and replacement of the shutters on the front elevation that you saw in the previous photo. Oops. So the first element is the repairs to the extensive repairs to the roof trusses. So these are structural repairs to the roof. Okay, so as I was saying, the structural repairs to the roof involves work to 5 of the roof trusses, which are suffering. So you've got the, again, I can't point, but they've got the horizontal roof beams, and there's excessive rotting at either ends of the roof beams and the base of the parapet. The extent of the decay means the roof structure does not have adequate bearing to effectively transfer load into the wall. So basically, the roof trusses aren't getting the support they need because of the rotting of the timber. And what they're proposing is to sandwich the historic timber between a pair of new pieces of timber, and that will be bolted onto the historic timber elements. They will then be embedded within the wall, carrying the load of the roof to the walls. So this sort of really helps to illustrate, you can see the excessive decay and rotting of the timber at the end of the horizontal beam there on the photograph to the left. And you can, again, see that on the image on the right. Just some more photographs. The photograph on the right, you can see the old plaster from the 17th century and then the modern plaster that's sort of been put underneath. And what's really clear with this building, sadly, is all the repairs and alterations we've carried out over the years have caused all the problems we're dealing with today because of inappropriate sort of impermeable materials that have been used throughout. So the main reason why it's here today is because we've had this objection from SPAB. And what I'll do just to explain is just go through each point so you clearly know why we've made a decision not to go against what they've said as a non-statutory consultee. In terms of the roof, their main concerns were about the methods that we're proposing in terms of using the timber on the roof trusses. They requested further investigation work, but what's clear to us is they haven't been to the site, but obviously our conservation officer has been to site, has extensive experience and knowledge of looking at historic buildings like this. So we feel further investigation work isn't required because we're basing it on the knowledge of our conservation officer. They also recommended that the engineering works aligns with the care accredited, is overseen by a care accredited engineer, and they made comments about the number of locations that are affected by this. So just in response, we feel the roof and ceiling joists are the same age as the main roof structure, that some of the loss of the ceiling joist ends, there will be some loss, but the great majority of these will actually remain. The repairs avoid, I'm sort of going to read this out a bit, disturbance of the joints of the main timbers and avoid changing the way the main roof structure functions. So we feel that that's acceptable. SPAB raised concerns about obscuring chamfered beam ends, and we again feel that's minimum and rudimentary chamfering or no chamfering. The applicant has sought advice from appropriate qualified and experienced specialists. So we, my understanding is not an essential requirement to use a care accredited engineer. And we think that the proposed options they put forward are acceptable at the end of the day. And I think we're taking a pragmatic approach. You know, we need to ensure the stability of this roof so there isn't further failing of the building, and that we feel that the methods that have been put forward are acceptable for the roof. And I'll just go through each other element fairly quickly. So the next problem is the floor joist repair. So rather similarly to the roof, at the ends of each of the floor joists, there's significant rotting and decay because water's egressed into the building. So again, they're not providing such satisfactory loading for the floors, so definitely require repair. And this sort of illustrates, can you see, so there's like obvious gaps at the end where the joists are next to the brick walls. What have you got here? So the applicant seeks consent to cut out the rotten outer section of the wall plate and then fill the void using brick embedded in lime mortar. And this just demonstrates even more the rather worrying gaps at the end of the joist. So there's proposals for two methods for repair, and we feel that actually it's satisfactory. Both of these methods are a suitable approach. And what's set out in the application is the method selected will depend on the condition of each joist when they get there and try and repair it. So that has to be assessed on site when they do further work. So this just shows that there's a number of repairs proposed to the floor joists on both the second floor, and this illustrates the number on the first floor as well. So in terms of the SPAB response, SPAB made it clear that they feel that steel should be used, steel angle should be used, and we personally feel that actually Naomi does, is not really supportive of bringing in quite a modern material. We think actually if the repairs can be done with timber and brick and, you know, appropriate mortars, that's more reflective of the materials that would have been used in the building. So we personally feel that the steel angles will be a much more intrusive method to try and deal with this and less appropriate in this case. And I think I've just said what I said about that. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to add. Oops. So they're also proposing there's external masonry and wall repairs because there's structural problems with the building and crackings appearing in a number of places. So they're going to stitch across the cracking with helical stainless steel bars. They're called heli bars, but it's like a helical bar, and they'll be able to hold the building together that way. This is a common approach, conservation practice, to try and secure and hold together structural problems with historic buildings. And they'll be using the same bricks bedded in lime mortar. And this just shows the location of the helical bars. you can see on the right-hand image the problems with the cracking in the building. And that's actually the parapet as well, isn't it? Which is, from what I understand, is a concrete later addition, as well as had concrete repairs, which again has caused all the problems because it's an impermeable material with building. So another part of the scheme, there's just a couple more, it won't take too long, is to replace the windows in the cell loft. So this is the later addition, the 19th century building at the back of the museum. And SPAB raised, I'll just show you some photographs. These are the windows here, which of our view, since Nova's been on site, are actually 1980s windows, so they're not original parts of even the 19th century part of the building. And SPAB suggested that further assessment was required before that we make a decision on this, but we feel it's clear that these windows are later additions. I'll just go to the next slide. That these date from the 1980s, and that it would be acceptable to replace these. We also feel, in line with the NPPF, that we have had sufficient information submitted as part of the application to make that assessment and judge that that's the correct approach. So just a couple more bits. They're also re-rendering all the walls, external walls to the building, and I'll show you some of the photographs because it's quite clear. These, again, cement was used for the external rendering, which, as you can see from the images here, resulted in severe rotting in the lintels above the window. So the proposal is to use a lime-based mortar, lime-based render for the entire building, I think, isn't it? For all the rendered parts. Yeah, for all the rendered, obviously rendered part of the building. And we're fully supportive of that because that will allow the building to last into the future and help protect the repaired bits that would be granted for the consent in the future as well. So just the final element as part of the scheme are to replace the shutters on this front gable end of the building. You can see the shutters on the screen there. They've obviously all been removed at the moment and stored. And if you see the window to the right, there's, I forget what it's called, that is the housing for the, is it a pelmet? That's it. You can see the metal piece above would normally be, and the bit at the back is the housing for the shutters. They've remained on the building. SPAB have said again that they'd like further investigation work to determine the exact significance of these shutters, but we feel these are late additions to the building, and the fact that basically all these have been taken off and they're either going to be put back on the building or replaced like for like, that's acceptable. So, just to conclude then, our recommendation is to grant approval subject to conditions. These are our standard conditions in terms of commencement and just ensuring the development is carried out according to the plans, with a couple of additional conditions just to make sure the render's appropriate and the plaster work is appropriate. That's it.
Thank you, Henny. So obviously I'm inviting questions. If they become technical questions, then I would expect Navy Archer to take those. But any questions related to that presentation, please, members? Councillor Atkinson first.
Looking at the photos, it doesn't look as if the, what we call the struts are going to be visible anyway because they're under the floor. Is that right? The floor struts, which SPAD was objecting to.
Yes, you're right. It will be completely concealed above the line of the ceiling, and they were never intended to be looked at. And I think maybe because SPAD haven't been on site, I think that might be their confusion there, that they haven't quite realised that.
Okay, yeah, that's just, can I just, questions?
Councillor Rawson.
Thank you. Just a question about SPAB. When it says ancient buildings,
but that's protection of ancient buildings rather than old buildings. Is that just because they wanted a good acronym, or is there like a period in which they specialise in? Because obviously the sail loft is a lot more recent than the original building. Would that normally be something that they would consult on, or are they a particular era?
So the way it works, there are a number of these national amenity societies. There's the Ancient Monument Society for very, very old things. Then there's SPAB, and then there's the Georgian Group for things that are the Georgian period, the Victorian Society, and the 20th Century Society. When they are consulted statutorily, they generally divvy up amongst themselves. However, having said that, they are free to comment on anything that they think they have an interest in. The name comes from William Morris, and they've been around since then.
Sorry, it's a statutory one. They wouldn't necessarily normally consult then on kind of 19th century, like the sail loft bits. They would have. That's just what I want to kind of.
Sure. So on the statutory one, they would be consulted if demolition was proposed. They generally aren't consulted other than for demolition. But the age is the sort of age of the most interesting bit of the building. So they probably would comment on this building because the most interesting bit is late 17th century.
Councillor Banyard.
Thank you. So there seems to be quite a big difference between SPAB's estimate of how many ceiling joists are involved here. They say there might be 32, and in this report, the officer think there's about 20. So could we hear about how confirm the number of ceiling joists that actually are in the building and how that figure has been calculated?
There is a plan that shows them all, but unfortunately it's not on this presentation. So we've got 1, 2, 3. So you can see the small ceiling joists on that plan, I think, up in the... Do you all understand what you're looking at? Yeah, good. And can you go on a few? Next one. Yeah, stop. Oh no, that doesn't help. No, sorry. Have you got it in the presentation? Basically, I counted, and I came up with the 20 joists, some of which will be cut at both ends. And I don't know how to put that figure. But I went back to the roof plan that was submitted with the application, and I counted the number of joists that were likely to be affected.
Yeah, it's on that.
Yes, I counted them.
Thank you. Councillor Jobson.
Thank you. In the report at page 25, where you set out the relevant policies, you refer to the MPPF paragraphs 2110, 212 and 215. SPAB then refer in their objection to 217, saying it's not been satisfied. Can you tell me, is it relevant in your view, 217, or is it not relevant, and where have SPAB got it from?
Paragraph 217 says that an applicant has to provide sufficient information for the decision maker to make a decision. And SPAB felt that not enough information had been supplied on the date of the windows, the date of the shutters, and the reasoning behind the repair methodology. And our view is that we did have that information.
Do I have any? Councillor Wilson, you coming back? Are you?
Is that okay? Thank you. A privilege because there's only one other thing on it. Just back to SPAG's option for the fixing the joist, just in real layman's terms. In my head, they're talking about attaching metal that goes up and along and then attaches to the side of the building. Is that right? Is that what they're kind of... I know that's not what your preferred method is. I'm just wondering how that would work when there is so much gap. I mean, I'm not at all concerned that I was in that building within the last 12 months and thinking, but that's a huge gap. How would that, because you can't stretch the wood back to the end, so how would that how would their method work as an alternative to what you've proposed?
Well, to reassure you a bit, having been in the building, those bits with a really big gap are resting on something below that is resting on something else, which is why it hasn't all collapsed. But you're quite right. We think, and I think it's relevant for context, that the lead contractor who will be running this site is a very experienced craft joiner. That's his background. And as the conservation officer, I personally am more than happy to trust the joiner to assess each joist and make a decision as to whether timber is the right material to use in that instance, or whether he thinks that he wants to use metal. There will be some instances where probably you can't embed a timber in the wall without causing too much disturbance. And I think in those instances, it will be sensible to basically bolt a piece of steel to support the joist. But my view is, having looked at the size and number of gaps we've got, I think it will be fine to put a timber in, to do the timber repair either side most of the time.
Can you add any other questions on the presentation? No. We have no public forum statements, either from members of the public or from ward councillors or other members. We're therefore moving in now to member debate. So I offer it to the floor. Anybody wishes to make a contribution? Councillor Atkinson.
I move we support the officer's recommendations. I've read this very carefully. I live in a 200-year-old house myself, which I've had to do similar things, take off cement rendering, and conform to listed building consent. So I'm entirely satisfied that the recommendations before you today are fair and proportionate, and that when the work is carried out, it will be carried out with the historic nature of the building in mind. Thank you.
Councillor Atkinson, could you just are you asking for a motion that we move to the vote, or
Yes, I'd be very happy for us to move to the vote.
Okay.
Yes, I would.
Just before I ask for a second on that, I would like to make a comment. Okay, that obviously this is a building that is owned by Exeter City Council, and it is really important that we are open and transparent in our actions on this building. The damage that's happened to this building has happened because in the past planning permission has been given for inappropriate repairs. So with that in mind, I'm just going to ask one more time if any other members have a contribution to make before I take Councillor Atkinson's motion. Does anybody wish to make a contribution?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very historic building. I know that we're looking at just the consent for listed buildings, but it has got scaffolding up at the moment, which is completely blocking the neighbouring road because Topsham was built for boats, not cars. And so it's causing a lot of difficulties. And my view actually is, if we don't do something, at the moment the scaffolding is kind of holding a lot of the rendering up, I think, from what it looks like. So we're just going to kind of exacerbate problems in this beautiful building that was gifted to the people of Topsham as a museum. But yes, I think it's, as Councillor Atkinson says, it's often the case when you've got listed buildings that they need lots of very careful care and attention, and it feels like the team have done a really good job of evaluating what is right and proper this time, and hopefully can unpick some of that damage that was previously done and do a really sensitive restoration of a beautiful building.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a proposal from Councillor Atkinson that we move to the vote. Do I have a seconder? Seconder from Councillor Ketchin. Thank you. In that case, members, we will move to a vote. I'm asking for those in favour of accepting the officer's recommendation that, subject to the conditions, we grant consent. Those in favour, please.
That's unanimous, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you very much, members. Right, we move on to item on the agenda number 6, which is a list of decisions made and withdrawn applications. Councillor Poll, have a face round there. Thank you for your patience. Sorry to have kept you away from the debate. Okay, you have all been given this list in advance and have an opportunity to look through them. Does anybody have any comments, questions relating to that? No, I don't see any. In that case, I would like to move to a vote that we note that list of decisions made, withdrawn applications. Those in favour, please.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. In that case, I move on to agenda item number 7. This is the appeals report. Again, you have had that issued to you in advance, so you've had a chance to look through. And again, I invite questions. I see Councillor Mitchell. Just before we start, did you want to comment on the typo?
Thank you, Chair. Just draw your attention for the record to there's a typing error on page 86, which is related to appeal that was allowed 170 Pennsylvania Road. It says appeal allowed with costs. In fact, as it goes on to clarify in the report itself, the application for costs was dismissed, so it wasn't allowed with costs against the council.
So it was allowed, but we didn't have costs.
Correct.
Right, okay. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Page 86, Roger, on page 87, that same application. Just a point of clarification, I think, for future reference. I assumed he'd applied for an appeal with costs and then at the end didn't get it. Is the statement on precedent. Clearly, this is a development where the outbuilding, which have now been confirmed, can be used for the use the applicant wants. And it says this decision is based on the specific facts of this case and does not set precedent for future development. Does that just relate to that site, or does it relate generically to applications where people are applying for outbuildings, garage conversions, or anything else? Because I'm just worried about the spate of Airbnbs or other types of HMO developments in backyards, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I think the answer is, and it's the standard answer that planners always give, that every case is dealt with on its own merits. And therefore, it's not setting a precedent generically, but it could be argued, if we had a similar application in the future, the applicant could draw attention to this decision and say it's a precedent that justifies a similar decision, and the decision maker would have to consider that and how similar they are. But the trouble is no two cases are identical, so there will be reasons why another case will be similar or different. So I don't think it sets a worrying precedent in the sense of it will be repeated again and again, but it's something we would have to take into account in determining similar applications.
We believe this applicant lost a similar appeal on another property.
Thank you. Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, thank you. In relation to 16 Chapel Road, I mean, this is a listed building consent, and this is an absolute eyesore. And I'm very disappointed that this eyesore was erected without consent by a Green candidate for Topsham. Oh, sorry, 85. Yeah, he's the county councillor for Topsham. He's erected without consent this awful corrugated metal shed in Alphington in a listed building, and has, pursued this, as you can see. I mean, it beggars belief that anyone could actually put this awful shed up by a listed building. So what I want to know is, when is he going to take it down? And what steps are you going to take to make him take it down and to stop this kind of thing happening again? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. Following the appeal decision that you've just read about here, it would have been passed to our enforcement officer to instigate, firstly, informal discussions about the removal of the building, or followed on by formal enforcement measures if necessary. I'm afraid I can't tell you what stage that's at, but now draw it to my attention. I'll speak to her about it and I'll let you know.
you. Are there any other comments on the appeals? All right, okay, thank you very much. That concludes that item. I'm therefore proposing that we note that list of appeals and ask for a show of hands to accept that being taken into the record.
That's unanimous,
Yes, unanimous, right, super, thank you. Right, where are we? Date of next meeting. Right, the next meeting will be on Wednesday, the 28th of May at 5:30, and we'll be back at the Civic. I do thank you all very much for attending this evening. I appreciate your attention. A nice brief meeting, which I'm very pleased about, and look forward to seeing you at the next one, if I am chair.